all the bells to figure out which. Bonjour, mes amis. Welcome to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. Whether you are here with us in Worship Hall or watching from wherever, whenever, you are welcome here. I'm the Reverend Eric Meter, this congregation's lead minister, and I need a Canadian spelling lesson, obviously. I want to admit that right off the bat. My apologies. The censors and editors didn't get it either. Who here hasn't made ever a spelling mistake? I'm in good company then, all right. And we gather this morning on a bit more typical January Sunday morning than the weather proved to be last week. This morning I'm joined by our worship associate Chris, as well as Jody, Pat, and members of our choirs who will be giving us the gift of music this morning. Our young ones are generally downstairs for another messy church Sunday. So let's have some fun here ourselves. Let us rise and sing this morning. Pat and Mariella, would you please lead us in singing? Ooh, lots of people. This is great. We're going to be singing When Our Heart Is in a Holy Place, number 1008 in your teal hymnal.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, welcome to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa. My name is Chris, and I'm delighted to be your worship associate this morning. Whether you are taking part in this worship celebration from home or wherever else you may be, wherever else you may log on, you are welcome here. We acknowledge that our FirstU campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and that the work of reconciliation is a responsibility of our congregation and of all Canadians. Our goal is to educate ourselves and to all those who have the willingness to understand, to be of service to those who are at risk, and to advocate for justice. Do take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch during this protracted pandemic. If you're new to FirstU and would like to learn more about us, please contact us through our email at welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. And if you are right here in Worship Hall with us this morning and you would like more information about FirstU, it's available at the welcome table, at the back of the pews. Kate's waving at us. And now here is Casey from our board to highlight our announcements for today. Casey.
Good morning, everyone. This morning we have 3 announcements from our religious exploration program. Registration for our Coming of Age program is now open. This 5-month program will begin in late January and will give youth aged 12 to 14 the opportunity to explore and develop their own spiritual identities. Also, a reminder that parents of children aged 4 to 7 can now register for Our Whole Lives, the OWL program. The course will be held every Sunday beginning on January 22nd, and topics include things like learning about our bodies, different family configurations, how babies begin, and body boundaries. And if anybody has questions about that, feel free to ask me, because I was a previous facilitator and I really loved it. Finally, you may have been waiting for this. I know I have. Mystery Pals is a fun intergenerational group activity composed of pairs of pals, one young person with an adult. The idea is to get to know each other by exchanging notes, crafts, cards, riddles, puzzles, and books. It's a great way to connect with our congregation's younger members. Exchanging will begin in February, and registration is open for both young people and adults. To learn more or register about any of these programs, see our website, or of course the EUU. And is Donna here, or somebody from the Environmental Action Group? I don't think, oh, okay.
I think Donna's getting back today, so she might just be rolling in. Just a brief message. A lot of Donna's work making announcements is about petitions to sign and people to influence. So I thought I'll kind of start early in 2023 with a bit of goodish news. And there's been a lot of talk about the province pushing gas generation when this is something just horrible for the climate. 2 municipalities in Ontario have rejected it. So that's Brampton and Windsor. So if you ever think signing petitions, being a bit of an activist, never gets you anywhere, there's a bit of evidence. Keep that thought for the rest of the year. Thank you.
We encourage you to sign up for the EUU, our weekly email newsletter, to check our Facebook and Instagram pages, and our webpage for notices and updates. Our calendar continues to be as full as ever, though as global health challenges continue, many activities are still taking place online. Whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, and however you identify, today, you are truly part of our spiritual community. Welcome.
Casey, Chris, Mike, thank you. I need a little prop support here. That may not be sufficient. We'll see. We'll see. Have faith, right? We light our chalice this morning to these words by Monica Jacobson Tennyson. What is it that calls you here, that calls you onward, that calls you inward, that leads you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make that change, to ask that question, to take that journey? What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you up in hard times? It is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truths, this air, and our hearts.
Our centering words today are by Don W. Vaughan Forster. Like pendulums, we swing from hunger to hunger, from hunger for the one great truth, absolute, eternal, mystical, to hunger for simple, near-in, familiar truths that change as we change, grow as we grow. Like pendulums, we swing from hunger for cosmic imperatives commanding us to expand ourselves, to hunger for immediate and authentic inner promptings, urging us to be ourselves. We would be right with heaven, so we swing outward. We would fulfill our own heart, so we swing inward. We would grasp the holy, and we would create ourselves. We have this dual hunger to serve the cosmos that commands us, to become more than we would, and to be our genuine selves, content with what we are. So we ride this pendulum in hunger for life. We ride from truth that calls us out to truths that call us in. And all because the gravity of life pulls across our hunger, never allowing us to stay on one side or the other, always moving us with new urgency for the wholeness that would bind both the cosmic and the personal. And so life pulls us as we swing from truths to truths, from cosmos to self, from mystery to clarity, from out to in. It is our state to swing and to be drawn ever into another swing. This is the motion that makes ours a human life. May the great gravity of life, which pulls us along an unknown holy axis, never let the pendulums we are cease swinging until the truth we seek and the truth we are one.
Each week at this time, we pause in honor of the joys and the sorrows and challenges of our lives. We do so by placing a stone in a bowl of water, and the ripples aren't always just contained by the bowl. The ripples continue through us here in the pews and out the doors into the community beyond. Our first stone this morning, the largest one I could find, is a joy, a stone for Catherine and Stan's growing family. The two are pregnant. And a stone for the couple's friend who is in critical condition in the hospital. If Catherine and Stan are not with us this morning, it is because they are in the hospital supporting her. A stone for Mary, whose sister-in-law, Lorna, died on Friday night due to several health issues. A stone for Beryl, who let us know that her sister-in-law, Marion, has died after a long struggle with multiple myeloma. A celebration of Marion's life took place last week in Toronto, and Beryl was able to participate. Stone for Helen, who reached out this week to share the news that her father, Ian Spencer, died late last month at the age of 98. And a stone this morning also for the memory of the Reverend Brian Kopke, who served this congregation from 1985 through 2007. He died on December 31st following a long illness. We'll announce plans for Reverend Kopke's memorial here in this space when they are finalized. And the last stone this morning, as always, for the joys and sorrows and challenges that remain, at least for now, in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. A caring card for Reverend Kopke's family is at the back of the hall. I would invite all of you to sign it, even if you were not around during Reverend Kopke's time serving this congregation. A card with the signatures of those here this morning shows the family that we understand that people like him gave so much to this community. It's a way of saying thank you and to showing deep appreciation. Let us sit together now for a few moments in stillness and quiet reflection before Pat brings us back to the shared space with the gift of music once more.
Thanks, Pat. Our reading today is by Barbara Brown Taylor, called An Altar in the World. In my life so far, I've been a babysitter, a cashier, a horseback riding instructor, a nursing unit clerk, a cocktail waitress, a special events coordinator, a hospital chaplain, a pastor, and a college professor. And those are just the jobs I've been paid for. I still have not given up on becoming a chef, a jewelry maker, a travel writer, a bookstore manager, or the most secret, thrilling vocation of all, a member of Cirque du Soleil. I don't have my heart set on becoming an acrobat or anything. I'd be happy selling tickets or managing props. Anything that would let me play a part in the transformation that comes over ordinary, worn-out people when they become part of the circus. I have no defense for this largely frivolous list, except maybe that every job I've ever worked has brought me into contact with a crowd of people I might never have discovered any other way. Every job has required me to learn things that have opened up whole new dimensions of reality for me. Every job has revealed some ability I did not know I had, just as it has exposed some clumsiness I was pretty sure I did have. While I was a hospital chaplain, I discovered that the sicker people were, the more they forgave my ineptness. After the doctors had left the room and there was nothing to do but die, a patient would often let me get by with sitting and watching television with her while we held hands. Earlier in my life, I thought there was one particular thing I was supposed to do with my life. I thought that God had a purpose for me, and my main job was to discover what it was. This thought heated up while I was in seminary, where I attended classes and drank beer with other students who knew exactly what they would do when they graduated. All I had was a love of what I was learning and the people I was learning it with. I did not have a single clue about what I would do when I graduated. I did not even belong to a church, so I began asking God to tell me what I was supposed to do. What was my designated purpose on this earth? Since this was an important prayer, I searched for the right place to pray it. After a few lackluster attempts by the side of my bed and a few more in various cubbyholes around campus, I found a fire escape that hung precariously from the side of a deserted Victorian home next door to the Divinity School. I crept over there after dark, stepping over the danger, keep off sign at the bottom. I climbed to the top, listening to the bolts creak as I tried to minimize the thundering of my feet on the narrow iron steps. The fire escape turned out to be an excellent place to pray. Doing something that scared me cranked up my courage. Escaping up instead of down prepared me for other reversals. There was not a chance anyone could sneak up on me. The wind smelled like the moon. I went up there so many times, I no longer remember which night it was that God finally answered my prayer. One night, when my whole heart was open to hearing from God what I was supposed to do with my life, God said, "Anything that pleases you." "What?" I said. "What kind of an answer is that?" "Do anything that pleases you," the voice in my head said again, "and belong to me." At one level, that answer was no help at all. The ball was back in my court again. I could be a priest or a circus worker. God really did not care. At another level, I was so relieved that I sledded down the stairs that night. Whatever I decided to do for a living, it was not what I did, but how I did it that mattered. If I wanted a life of meaning, then I was going to have to apply for purpose for myself. And now we are going to have the winter choir up to sing Dona Nobis Pacem for us. Dona
I smell incense. Is anybody else? That was wonderful. Thank you. This morning, as I mentioned last week, our overarching theme for this month is finding our center. This morning, I want to ask, what is this center we might speak of? Center yourself. Get to the heart of the matter. On one hand, we know what we mean when we say or we hear things like this. On the other hand, do we really? What does center yourself really mean? Besides just sort of a general put down, get your act together kind of statement. You'll hear me use, and I'm sure you have if you've been around to more than at least one service, I use phrases like the core of our faith, which I freely admit I usually do not go to great lengths to define. Let's take a moment right at the start of this reflection to look at the chosen name of our faith tradition. Unitarian. Inspired by 17th century German biblical criticism, those who were later given the name Unitarians realized that the Church's talk of the Holy Trinity was actually not at all scriptural, but a later addition. These early Unitarians focused on what they felt was more authentic to Christianity, the oneness of God. And the Universalists, believing that a loving God would never damn anyone to hell, although there were many hours of debates on whether purgatory was for everyone, and if so, for how long purgatory would last. It is one of our species' greatest failings, greatest shames, how much angst and literal bloodshed came about in response to the questions our ancestors in faith so bravely asked. But back to our topic this morning, the center of things. I find it interesting to note that we're part of a religious tradition that does not give a single emphasis. The Unitarian one and the Universalist all. There's a tension there, one that may have parallels in our lives. As an aside, I remember being at the unveiling of our dark gray hymnals back in the summer of '93, nearly 30 years ago now. While many people loved many of the songs, one of the more often heard complaints is, where's the center? Where's the center? As if there had been one in that hymnal's predecessor. The hymnal before that, the red one, at least divvied up, took turns from a theist perspective and a humanist perspective. It took turns, they balanced. So the center was somewhere in between the two poles, but I digress. The Unitarian one and the Universalist all, the tension here that may have parallels in our lives. Now maybe like me, some of you have experienced guided meditations where the worship or workshop leader invited the group before them to explore in visual terms the center of who they were and to delve into their metaphoric roots. In my most vivid recollection of one of those, in my mind's eye, I am led down a well where at the bottom weren't whetstones and muck, but a small room, dry and cozy, with a reading chair, a small lamp to one side, and on the other side of the chair, a small table on which there is a small stack of books. One chair, but many books to read. Seems I am at home in this faith tradition after all. And yet, The words I shared earlier from our chalice lighting are still resonating, if not in my mind's eye, in my mind's ear. What is it that calls you here, that calls you onward, that calls you inward, that leads you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make the change, to ask the question, to take the journey? It is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truths, this air, our hearts. Relationship, the author claims, is the beating heart of our faith. Now, 100 years ago, or even 50, you would not have heard from your preacher in this hall that relationship was the heart of our faith. And yet, from Martin Buber's I, thou theology to the more recent emphasis on listening those at the margins of power and the goal of growing beyond white supremacy culture, we've been moving in this direction for some time now. This is our work, and it asks the best of us. To know ourselves so that it is clear to us where we end, so that it is clear to us where others begin. And acknowledging not only in our minds, but in our hearts, yes, a tricky metaphor, that understanding ourselves both serves in helping us understand others and can get in the way of doing so. We will always need to ask and observe others to give them the respect they deserve. Assuming that how we understand things is how others understand things will only bring trouble sooner or later down the road. We can lose ourselves just as easily in the myriad details of our days as we can looking for that one true thing that will give us meaning and clarity. And if we feel some tension between the many and the one before that one thing that will give us clarity and the reality around us, maybe that's simply an indication that we recognize the complexity of life. Recall the words Kate offered us earlier. We ride this pendulum. We ride from truth that calls us out to truth that calls us in. And all because the gravity of life pulls across our hunger, never allowing us to stay on one side or the other, always moving us into a new urgency for the wholeness that would bind both the cosmic and the personal together. Echoing only a bit from the reading that Kate shared us earlier, I remember a night when I was younger and struggling to know which direction to take in life. I had heard folks at my church talk about the need for us to pray to our ancestors, so I thought, okay, why not? So one night before I fell asleep, I named 3 ancestors that I knew of and left a spot open for those whose names I did not know and asked for their guidance, their advice, their wisdom. In the morning I awoke, and when I remembered the prayer from the night before, I felt disappointed. There had been no dream or other insight that had come to me, no response. And then, just on the in-breath, the word simplify came to me as clear as a bell. This wasn't exactly the message I had been asking for, but it was what I needed to hear. I had been working with Southeast Asian refugees, Cambodians for the most part, refugees and immigrants in Minnesota at the time. And at that time, 1/4 of the kindergartners in the city of St. Paul, Minnesota, where I lived, were of Southeast Asian descent. 1/4. And as I was working with Cambodians' parents and grandparents and youth, I kept learning the hard way how much was involved in truly understanding another culture. If you want, I'll outline some of my minor and major faux pas, but that would take a little longer than we have time for this morning. At that time in life, I was also increasingly involved in leadership in the denomination's young adult groups and regional activities, even for a bit on the continental level. So that night, I was praying for guidance, and the answer I heard was simplify, or in other words, play to your strengths, bucko. So I began looking into seminary. According to Tom Rockman, in a recent article in the Globe and Mail under the headline, "We Cracked the Happiness Code. Why are humans still such a mess?" Tom writes, "Among the insights we've gleaned from studying happiness over the last few years is how important other people are. The lonely suffer more than just the blues. They're deprived of a vital resource. Poverty is a major cause of misery too, but once you reach a comfortable level, more wealth brings little extra benefit. Kindness has benefits, and personality plays a role. Some are just born happier." The article continues, "The good life is a dish with many different ingredients in it," says Mike Viking, that's his name in English pronunciation, of the Happiness Research Institute in Copenhagen. "We need good coffee," he continues, "and good food. We need connection. We need to take a step back and feel happy with what we see. We also need purpose and meaning in life." Summarizing the gist of the article broadly, what we've learned from our research into happiness over the last few decades is that while happiness may be good, satisfaction is actually a better goal. That taking a step back and being happy with what we see, sense of personal satisfaction in the lives we lead and how we make the decisions we do. Well, I'm not the biggest fan of Sigmund Freud. I do agree with him that the two most important factors in our lives are love and work, in that order. And of course, I define both of those terms broadly. Our work is more than simply our vocation. When we retire, there is still much for us to do in this world, as many, if not most of you, know and exemplify. So back to the original question this morning, is there a center to our lives, to our beings, and even our communities? Yes, I think there may be, but it is, of course, complicated. I keep thinking back to the title of a Unitarian sermon preached nearly 200 years ago now, William Ellery Channing's "The Transient and Permanent in Christianity." In it, he separated the core of Christian faith, the teachings and actions of Jesus, with the more transitory, what I'll call the focus du jour. I've mentioned earlier that 100 years ago, you would not be hearing a preacher in a Unitarian or Universalist pulpit talk of the core of our faith being relationship. We didn't talk about community 100 years ago. But these days, community, love, and justice are pretty much our holy trinity. They're really all we talk about. The focus of any age, hopefully, is not distraction, but a corrective emphasis. We need to talk about community now because the needs of our civilization demand it. 100 years from now, you may hear preachers, if there are still communities of faith where such attention is paid, talking about how in the world we had all been so self-centered not to heed the calls of fundamental change in order to prevent or at least seriously diminish the effects of all our carbon emissions. In thinking about our center, the center of our persons and the center of our faith, I also take inspiration from Taoism, which says right at the outset that the way that can be named is not the eternal way. So while I believe that there are centers, I don't feel much pressure to name them. This is the realm of poetry more than science. I hope that does not disappoint. When we talk about the heart of our beings, it's helpful to remember that our hearts are just muscles, after all. And each of our hearts has 4 chambers and an electrical system without which we would not be able to live. We would not be able to breathe. Next week, I'll offer some reflections on how we try and might try more to keep ourselves and our lives in balance. But for today, I'll leave you with these words, and you've probably heard me share them before, from my colleague Angela Herrera. This is her piece, "All that you need lies within you." Consider this an invitation to you, she begins. Yes, you. With all your happiness and your burdens, your hopes and regrets, an invitation if you feel good today, and an invitation if you do not. If you are aching, and there are so many ways to ache. Maybe your heart is heavy or hardened. Maybe it's troubled and peace can only take up residence only in a small corner, only on the edge, with all that is going on in this world and in your life. Nimoto, it doesn't matter. All that you need for a deep and comforting peace is to grow that place within you. Once it is in your heart, let it spread to your life. Let it pour from your life into the world. And once it is in the world, let it shine among all beings. May it be so. Thank you.
This congregation has a long history of care, vitality, and bringing people together to move the arc of justice forward. We have been able to live into our hopes and dreams because of the generosity of those within and beyond this community. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or anywhere else, you are part of this community. To make a gift in support of the work of the congregation, you don't need to use the baskets that will soon be beginning to make their way among the pews. Wherever you are invited to go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how to make a donation or to keep up with your pledge. Our gifts are freely given and gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this congregation, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another. And now please rise as you are willing and able as we join together in our closing hymn, Return Again, number 1011 in our teal hymnal.
You can sit down. Well, you sound better when you stand up. Before we begin to close this time of worship and reflection, a reminder that our online fellowship hour will begin at 11:30. For those of you who would like to access fellowship hour here, you can do so in the lounge out that door and around to the right. There you'll be able to connect with all those joining fellowship hour from home and have discussions with those joining in person. Fellowship hour, it needs to be said again perhaps, is a fabulous way. You've listened to me, but it's a chance for you to share and listen to each other. And the conversations are rich indeed. We extinguish our chalice this morning to these words from Richard Gilbert. As we leave this community of spirit, may we remember the difficult lesson that each day offers more things than we can do. May we do what needs to be done, postpone what does not, and be at peace with what we can be and do. Therefore, may we learn to separate that which matters most and from that which matters least of all. Thank you. You can extend your hands, if you wish to those near and those beyond this space. As we prepare now to leave this space, may our hearts remain open and our minds remain clear. We are people of both reason and heart, of both memory and hope. May we also always remain people of love, providing a place in this world for our spirit, a place that can be best called home. And now, as we return to the challenge of helping the world come alive in love, let me say, go in peace, my friends. Go in peace.